Hello, good evening, and welcome to this second in the series of webinars for the Hospitality and Tourism Sector Recovery Package. Following on from the fascinating world of virtual AR and VR last week, ably presented by my colleagues Kieran Swale and Cathal McDonald, we come down to real reality with something close to my heart, food. Specifically, cutting meat, cooking it, and putting the right wines with it. My name is Brian McGee, and I am one of the Innovation and Technology Specialists here in SRC. With me this evening, I have Michael Prunty, and Dean Coppard, both deeply involved in the food industry, and who will be on hand to answer any questions coming out of our presentations this evening. Michal, can I get you just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do in the college?
Thanks, Brian. My name is Michal Prunty. I'm the Butchery and Food Manufacturing Lecturer in the Southern Regional College. I mainly teach traineeships and apprenticeships throughout the food industry for butchery skills, food manufacturing, HACCP, WATOC, and a lot of all food industry qualifications. The college, we offer first-hand practical demonstrations where other places don't. We have a specific butchery department where we have all the equipment to teach the young apprentices, male, female, all the skills they need to progress in the industry.
Thanks very much, Michal. And if we could come to Dean, could I get you to do the same, please?
Hey, Ryan. My name is Dean Coppard. I'm an Australian chef who now lives in Armagh. I have recently sold Uluru Restaurant, which was my wife Sarah and my restaurant for 12 years. I now am contracted with SRC and as a food industry specialist. And how I work in terms with sort of people that are looking to develop new recipes, ideas, how they can get a product from initial thought through to production level in terms of innovation vouchers. We also offer an Innovate Us voucher, which is basically an upskilling course, which we sort of run through the SRC as well. But tonight we've done a little demonstration on how to get the best value possible out of cheaper and maybe lesser known cuts of meat. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks very much, Dean. And as Dean said, tonight we've got some specially commissioned short videos demonstrating the best of butchery, cookery and wine selection. Between them and afterwards, Michal and Dean will be here along with myself to answer any questions you have. So if you have any questions and you want to ask anything, please feel free to put it into the chat and we'll get to it in between the videos. First up, we have Michal, and Michal is going to demonstrate some butchery. Michal, can you give us a very brief introduction to what we're going to see just before this runs?
Yes, Brian. For this wee demonstration, myself and Dean picked sort of not lesser cuts, but cheaper lamb cuts to show how the two industries can work together to promote good quality eating for a lesser price. So the demonstration's a short version of a breaking down of a lamb carcass.
Thanks very much. I think would it be fair to say that the theme of tonight is doing more less expensively? I think that we're emphasizing the lesser known and cheaper cuts.
It's to help promote the industry so that once we come out of this, it's the COVID situation and businesses can start opening up, that we can provide the customer with good quality cuts, good quality meat cuts, and restaurant standard meals at a lesser price, so that both the customers getting the quality, but the businesses can also increase their profit margins.
Thanks very much. Okay. I think we'll run the video, and afterwards, as I say, we'll be available to answer any questions you have.
Hello folks, welcome to the Southern Regional College. My name is Michal Prunty. I'm the lead lecturer and coordinator for the Butchery and Food Manufacturing Qualifications at the SRC. Today we're doing a demonstration on lamb carcass. We're going to break it down into primal cuts, into subprimal cuts, and then the salable cuts. We're going to show you how to use or utilize lesser, cheaper cuts such as the shoulder of lamb compared to the deer cuts such as the cannon of lamb. I'm going to do the butchery demonstrations, and my colleague Dean Copper is going to do the cooking demonstration. We're calling these the cut it, cook it, and quaff it. And this is part of the hospitality and tourism sector recovery package. As we discussed, this is a lamb carcass. It's 21 kilo weight. Just to name the primal cuts that we have here, we've got the shoulder, with 2 shoulders, loin, leg, flanks. A lot of people will know about the loin chops, single loin, double loin, the legs, lamb. The shoulders are a slightly lesser cut. They require a lot more cooking. They are a cheaper cut. First off, we're going to break the carcass down into the primal cuts. As you can see, I've got a black glove on, but underneath I have my slash-proof and steel glove on for protection. I have my steel knife, bone knife, just give it a wee sharpen, maintain the edge. Steak knife as well, and handsaw. First off, I'm going to take the shoulder and neck off. To take the neck off, just at an angle, saw it off, set the knife down, saw through the bones only, and then finish cutting through with a knife. Next step is take the shoulders off. Now, depending on how big the shoulder, you can go through the 4th and 5th and 6th rib. For the sake of this video, we're going to go through the 4th and 5th rib. So I open up the cavity, count the ribs from the very top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going between the 5th and 6th. I can see it. Just put my steak knife through and bring it up. And then the same the other side, but always count. Always make sure that you count the ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring it up. Set it on the side. Finish cutting through the meat. Straight line. Handsaw again. Cutting through only the bones. And that takes your shoulders off. Next, I want to take the leg, and for this video I'm going to take the leg, but I'm going to leave the chump on the leg for later. So how I do that is I find the top of the hip bone with the thumb, and that gives me the marker of where I'm cutting. Cut straight down. So that separates my loin with the flanks on it, legs with the chump still on, shoulders, and the neck. That's your main primal cuts from the lamb. Next part is we're going to separate them down, and then we're going to take the bits that we need for the cooking demonstration off, bone them out, trim them up, and show you different ways of doing that. First, we're going to break down the leg of lamb. For this particular demonstration for hots, the chef has requested a minimum of 1 or else 2 lamb rumps trimmed and boned out. So first off, I'm going to separate the legs. As you can see, this end of the spine goes into the tail. So that if I hold it up here, there's a wee red line there that sort of gives you your cutting line. So first, split the 2 legs in the groin area. Hold your saw, try and make sure that it goes straight down the middle, gently. I'm using my hand to cover the blade so that it doesn't bounce up back over on top of me. So we've got our 2 legs lamb split. few things we have to watch out for. We have to cut access that isn't required. I'm not going to go into what it is, but it's excess fat and sinew. So here I'm splitting the trim. This is unusable trim, and this is going to be trim that we can use either in burgers, pieces, etc. First, I have to take the bone out of the leg, and this bone is the hip bone. So we start at the top, in with the tip of the knife, just gently following around the edge of the bone and taking it out as cleanly as possible. Break through the joint in behind that wee bone, and you just simply pull that. It opens the joint for you. You can use the tip of the knife. This is separating the hip bone and the tailbone. This will mean that there will be more meat left on the leg where possible. Now that I've opened this up, there's a wee joint in here, ball socket joint. You know, just a wee bit of knife maintenance. Make sure the edge is as sharp as possible. Just to show, I'm coming in behind the bone, keeping the bone knife as tight to the bone as possible so that I create less damage to the meat and leave as much meat on the leg as possible. Any excess meat that's left on the bone, trim it up. This is good practice as well. And it also makes sure that we're getting the most out of the lamb, as lamb is expensive at the moment. So we need to make sure that we get as much profit off it as possible. Just excess trimming. This is after we've took the hip bone out, just to get the chump off that we need, or the rump. It's just a straightforward cut. A wee bit of extra trimming. And there we have one of our D rumps. I'm going to tie this leg up for our roast. And then I'm going to quickly run through that one. When you're tying your roast, you don't want to tie it too tight, because one, it will squeeze the meat and squeeze out blood, which will decrease profit, but also when it's cooking, the the good juices will be squeezed out of the meat as well. Make sure that you get rid of your excess twine. Cut the knuckle off the end of the arm, leg. And there you have your leg of lamb roast. Next we're going to move on to the loin. In the loin here, you can see that there's two separate sides down through the spine, and then you've got the flanks either end. In here we've also got the lamb's kidneys that we're going to pull out. For the sake of these demonstrations, I'm going to split it down and take a cannon of lamb out of the loin, which I'll explain when we get there. The better known cuts from this is your single loin, double loin, cutlets. They're all around the same, but it's just different names we use in the trade. First thing I'm going to do is going to take the kidneys out. Now, let's just simply pull the kidneys out, set them aside, and just pull the outside kidney fat off them. Using your fingers, getting round. Now these kidneys are again cheap. They can be used in stews and pies, and also can be fried off. We're going to keep that aside, and we can sell them off as well to customers. And you can see it's quite simple just to pull them out of the kidney fat. Cut the fat off and you're left with your whole kidneys. Next I'm just going to trim that wee bit excess fat sitting in here, just so I can see my cutting line where I'm going to go down through the spine. Two different ways you can go about this. We don't have a bandsaw here just for health and safety reasons, because the students that we deal with start off from 16 up. So to use it, we're going to use a handsaw. Two ways: you can either split it straight down the middle now and then deal with the flanks after, or you can take the flanks off and then split it down the middle. For this, I'm just going to split it straight down the middle. Start at the tip, gently start it off at an angle, because the saw blade isn't long enough to completely saw through it at once. So make sure you're going down the middle. For safety, health and safety, I'm covering the blade with my hand so that it doesn't bounce up and cut me. And then re-angling in the saw. Straight down the middle. Now you can see I've split down the middle. There's a couple of things here I have to do before I can move on and start cutting. As you can see, like cutting through wood, cutting through bones creates bone dust. That has to come off, so we've got a scraper. Just gently scrape down any excess that's lying on the table, just to keep everything clean and tidy. Also, you'll see that the spinal cord is still left in it. Now, it is good practice to take that out. You can take it out different ways with a knife. I find using an S-hook, scraping down takes it out as cleanly as possible. That has to be taken out now for health reasons, food safety reasons. Same down the other side. Use the wee scraper again, get any excess off. And that's your two loins split. Next, I'm going to take the flanks off. Now, taking the flanks off will depend on what you want to get out of this. If you're doing, say, rack salam, you want to leave the rib bones on slightly longer so that you can French trim it up if that's what the customer or the chef or the restaurant requires. For this purpose, I'm just going to cut it slightly shorter, point it straight down, cut through, bring it towards the end of your table, hands over the blade again, and gently cut through. Same the other side. So now we've got our two loins, two flanks. I'm going to put the flanks aside, but they're also a nicer cut that you can use for various different products. Very versatile. Again, lamb ribs, like pork ribs, we can bone this out, trim it up and put it into steak lamb pieces. We can also use it for burgers or sausages or manufacturing products. Here's the loins. We have, traditionally we've got our double loin and our single loins. We can also use this, as I said there previously, for rack salam. We can also create cannon lamb, which we're going to do for this, and you can also do norzat salam. So this would be a more popular but more expensive cut. You have two loins out of lamb, so I'm going to place one back over here, and I'm going to create a cannon of lamb out of this for the purpose of the cooking demonstration tomorrow. So first I'm going to take the rail fillet and loosen it from the bone. And cut down into the double loins. Separate it off quickly. Put that aside. Now to create the cannon of lamb, all I want is the main eye of the fillet. Now in beef terms that would be the sirloin, but we're calling it the fillet in the lamb. I need to get behind these rib bones. So I just gently put my knife tight to the bone behind. Follow the shape of the bone and the outline of the bone line. Down. Cut through. That's going to be wasted, but a good idea is to ask your customer or keep them for chefs or yourself even, because you can make great stock and gravies out of the lamb bones. A wee bit of excess in there. Now, all I want is a trimmed cannon, so I want the fillet out of this. So I'm just going to go down the side. Pull it away. Set that aside for dealing with later. And the chef has requested, or if it is your customer has requested, that this be trimmed. So I'm going to take the heavy silver skin off the top of it. As clean as possible, leaving as much meat on the muscle. Now you need to take the silver skin off in this instance, because you leave it on and it's a fast cook. This silver skin will shrivel up and it can dry out the meat and it can make it very chewy. Now you have a nice trimmed cannon of lamb. Next section is the shoulders. So before we start boning anything out, I'm going to split them down. Just, it's very similar to the legs, straight down through the spine, as down the middle. We'll turn it away from myself. Have it sitting up. Saw down and just as straight down the middle as possible. So we have two shoulders here. There is a wee bit of trimming here first. So I'm going to take these glands out. Now these glands can be also counted as sweetbreads. Some people eat them. They're seen as a delicacy in some parts, so I'm going to set them aside. And this is just an excess blood sitting on a piece of meat, so I'm going to take it off. For these demonstrations, the chef has requested a shoulder lamb trimmed and boned. So I'm going to take one, do that for you and explain as I'm going through, and the other one I'm going to set aside for later. First off, the bone, I'm going to take the ribs out all in one. I'm going to leave the shank on as leverage for later on, and I'll explain why. Top, just go through the cartilage that connects the bones and come in behind the top. As I said previous, any meat is good practice to trim it off and keep it for your manufacturing products. A wee bit of nice maintenance. Just tidy up as I go. So I'm going to come in behind the ribs. I'm just going to sheet these all out. Put them aside. Then I'm going to take the rest of the neck out, spine leading into the neck bone. Just take your time, getting as much out or left on the shoulder as possible. That leaves us with this. Now, there's still a few bones left in here. There's the shoulder blade that we have to get out. And then we have to get the two arm bones out and I'll take the shank off. First, I'm going to find the shoulder blade and just gently scrape the meat off the blade. And follow it up to the joint. Cut down through to open it up so we can see and get the edge. As you can see, I've opened it up and exposed the whole shoulder blade. So now gently, with the tip of the knife, going to loosen the meat off the edge of the blade. Trying to hit the connective tissue that holds the meat or the muscle to the bone. Go down and break the joint. Get in behind as tight to the bone as possible. And now I'm going to use the shank as leverage to loosen off the bone as much as possible. Come behind. Make sure that I've got just pull the meat bone away. That's the connective tissue. It's holding the meat to the bone. So if you can get that off, your bone will come out very, very clean. Any wee bits, just make sure you take it off. Again, it's good practice, and that all goes towards your trim. Next, now I'm going to take the shank off. So when you're taking the lamb shank off, you're looking for the, as I call it, the elbow joint. You're going at a slight angle, and again, saw it off. Put it this side, and that's very popular for slow cooking at home. One last bone, and for the purpose of this, I'm going to tongue bone it. You can open it up and just take the bone out, but then you're breaking the solid muscles that are together. So if you can tongue bone it out, it leaves a better shape for you. So all I'm doing is finding the top of the bone and more or less just scraping the meat away from the bone to try and get it out as clean as possible. And this is where having the protective gloves on, so your slosh proof and steel glove, or a minimum of slosh proof, gives you that extra protection. So just work them down the bone. As you can see, I'm moving the meat itself instead of my own body, so I have full control of the knife. Once I have that, I go to this side just to loosen this end off, and then that bone should just come out. Sure. And that's that bone out. Any wee bits of meat again, take it off. Next part is trimming it up. Now, as you may know, lamb is a very fatty animal normally, so I want to get as much of the heavy fat out of this as possible. Now, I'm not going to over trim it. As I said, lamb is a naturally fatty animal, so it needs some of that fat left on for cooking and for profit as well. So I'm going to go through the different sections here, and I'll try and explain as I go. I'm going to just gently take this back, not take it off, take it back, and that'll expose some of the excess fat underneath. Just trim it up, and there is a few pockets of fat that have glands in it that would definitely need to come out. Turned over is the top end of the flank, and a good bit of heavy fat there that needs to come off. In behind the wee eye. But what you have to remember is the more trimming that you do, the more your costs go up. So the price has to go up as well. Up around the top. underneath. Now, show here, I just come underneath the fat and scoop it out because I want to leave the skin on, and there's very little difference in them. And the reason why I want to take this bit off is because there's a gland in the middle that isn't going to be nice for cooking, and that isn't really edible. Couple of more heavy pockets. Have a look around. As we're coming out of this, let's say, pandemic or situation, gives us an opportunity for the butchery trade and the catering trade to work more closely together, to use and utilise the skills across both sectors to help both sectors to increase profits while also providing the customers with the best possible product. So Dean tomorrow is going to show you use a couple of different cuts from the lamb, the slightly more expensive, such as the cannon, but he's also going to show how to use a shoulder, which is a cheaper cut, but it can create just as nice, if not nicer, finished product for your customer. One last wee pocket here, and then I'm going to tie it up and roll it up the way the chef or your customer wants it. So, for this purpose I'm going to use a string. Now you can put this through a netter, but I prefer string. So when you're tying the shoulder, as you'll have seen, there is a lot of separate wee muscles inside the shoulder. So you just have to tie it, be careful when you're tying. So I put one straight down the middle, not overly tight. And then I put a loose one down this direction, which is going to be cut off at the end, but it's just going to hold the shape for me together as I finish tying it, just loosely, just to hold it in place. Turn it back. Let's try and get one more on it here. and then just cut that middle string off, and then I can tidy up the edges by just taking a slice off. Again, that can be used for our diced or manufacturing. And there you have a bone rolled shoulder lamb.
Well, that was fascinating. I hope everyone agrees. It's certainly given me an appreciation of that, what you get, or what your meat has gone through whenever you ask for something like that or see it in the butchers. I didn't really appreciate just how much effort is involved and the kinds of skill needed. Although, of course, butchery is a very skilled occupation. Do you have any questions, Margaret? You're muted.
No, I don't think we do, Brian. All good to go.
All right. So the next thing then, we're going to look at what Dean can do with some of what Michal has produced. And I think then following that, we'll have some more questions. Then we'll look at what wines you might put with some of that food. So we'll just...
Brian, I think, looking at some of those skills that Michal did show there, I mean, there's tunnel boning, you're looking at, like, I haven't seen a butcher do tunnel boning in years, and it was only, it was a good friend of mine, Simon Dugan, would have done it with sort of pig's trotter, but that is a lost art. I can't tunnel bone. So I guess, the skills that Michal's showing there, that it's made me jog my memory of what I need to now be going back and teaching my guys, So yeah, look, it's fabulous to see that sort of an art form, and you're right, it's where the sort of the meat starts to where it can go, So a lot of people sort of skip the middle bit. They go into a supermarket or a butcher and they'll just go, oh, here's the meat, but they don't understand the skill and the years and years that it takes to be able to do that. So yeah, it's great to see Michal. Honestly, hands down, man. Really, really good skill.
Hopefully it didn't make it look too bad.
Certainly not.
You made it look easy, Michal.
Yeah.
Everybody could do it.
I look at the wastage on the bone. There was none there. I look at the skills needed, and you know what? You can't teach that. That's from learning, and that's from doing. And I think that's one thing that young students nowadays especially need to look at, is they need to practice. They need to get in a kitchen or get into a butchery and just go and keep doing it until you get it right.
It's you said about practice there. It reminds me of when I was showing how to tie a roast, and the butcher made me take a roll of bin bags home and tie them up and tie them up and tie them up and tie them up until I got the nuts right. So we don't do that here. We don't. In the SRC, we're not like that, but we try and give them the basic skills and bring them up throughout the couple of years that they're here, and then once they go on, they have to. Some people don't realize, or students don't realize, that after their apprenticeship's over, they think that they're fully qualified when they're not. I
think every day's a learning lesson.
Every day is learning day.
That's what I try to drum into, Brian.
I think you must be doing something right, Michal. Haven't we got a couple of people who went to World Skills for this?
We've had a few winners. World Skills, between World Skills and Premier Young Butcher UK, and we had a student, James Gracie, who went on to represent the UK in the European finals in Germany. So that's not me. That's not me. That's the skill. The students put in the work. I just mentor them through it. Like I can't take the credit for their hard work.
As my father used to say, they didn't lick it off the ground.
Hopefully not when we're talking about food and butchery there, but I think it might have been a wrong phrase. Okay, so let's get on with this cookery one.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So this is using Michal's cuts and what we can do with them. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
G'day guys, how you going? My name's Dean. We're here at the fabulous SRC facility in Newry. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how to maximise profitability within the hospitality industry. Following on from Michael's demonstration on the butchery last week, what we're going to do is we're going to show how you can make a good dish out of cheaper cuts. This is all part of the Huts project. And I think it's very, very poignant at the moment, especially with hospitality reawakening. It has been a struggle for the last 12 months, but now we're coming out of it. So what we need to do is we need to be able to maximize exactly how much revenue we can get in. And how we do that is using cheaper cuts, cook them longer and slower maybe, but get a fabulous result at the end. Right, so I'm going to get started here. Basically, we're going to do a little bit of meat butchery to start with. Following on from what Michael did the other day, he cut down a whole lamb. So what we got out of that lamb is a lamb shoulder. We also got some lamb rump, and we got a cannon. So what we would do with the lamb rump, it's quite a big bit of meat, that one there, okay? So I'm going to do a little bit of butchery work on it, because when you think about it, people do eat with their eyes, okay? So I want to try and make sure that when I go to present this meat, it does look appealing to the eye. So you don't want a big lump, basically. So this is going to be like a tasting of lamb. This lamb, it's local, and Michael's given us this fabulous cut here. This is what you would call a D cut of rump. And this D cut of rump is beautiful flavor. There's fat running through it. Don't be afraid of that. Fat actually gives it flavor. Basically, guys, there's going to be 3 elements of lamb on this dish. So you don't want to have one large bit of anything. So this rump I'm then going to cut in half. As that comes down, you get this beautiful little piece of lamb like that. And as I said, you've got that fat in there, but don't be afraid of that. That's going to give it flavour. Here's one I prepared earlier. Okay, so then I've just vac-sacked it. When I vac-sacked it, what I did is I took that lamb rump, okay, I then scored the top of the fat, every 1 centimetre there, and all that's doing is it's allowing anything that we put into that vac-sack, a little bit of oil, a little bit of thyme, a little bit of sea salt, to penetrate the fat. So that flavour will go in. What we find then is we cover it. I like using smoked sea salt. It really gives a good flavour. So a little bit of smoked sea salt over it, just rubbing that right the way in, right the way around. And then what we would do is put a little bit of thyme in, a little bit of olive oil, and then that goes into the vac-sack bag like that, okay? That one there, probably about 30 minutes at about 65 degrees in the sous vide, okay? Now, the next bit, okay, would be the cannon. Now the cannon, there's not a lot of fat on that one, okay? So it's very lean, it's full of flavour again, okay? So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to make a little pie. So this pie, I'm going to use some wild mushrooms, and what I've done is I have some wild mushrooms that I have had soaked. Now these wild mushrooms, again, they come in dried, they're not expensive. We're not talking about girolles or anything expensive. They're basically like a little wild mushroom that would come in dry. That's just been soaked in hot water. And what that gets is a lovely sort of rich mushroom stock as well. So to achieve this pie mix, all I'm going to do is going to cut this down into small little pieces. So it's basically like a little lamb force meat, okay? So as I cut down into that, you can see it's very lean. Because of its leanness, it allows us to add that extra flavour with the wild mushrooms. It really complements the lamb well too. When we're talking about putting a dish together, you've got to balance those flavours. You've got to have the sharpness, the richness. You've got to have, you know, a little bit of salt. You've got to have, with lamb, I like to use hard herbs. So you're talking about a little bit of rosemary, a little bit of thyme, garlic. Right, so that's all I'm getting there is like a little dice. Okay. So moving over here now, I'm going to go back into a green board, put that lamb back in there. Right. So when we're talking about this, we'll go into the wild mushroom. The wild mushroom, once it's been soaked, it really does give it, you can smell it, you know, it's got that richness in there, in the sort of aroma now. Right, so I'm just going to dice that down, mix it through. Right. And you've got the wild mushroom and lamb mixture in there. I'm going to add a little bit of thyme to that, and then I'm going to add a little bit of garlic as well. Okay guys, so this part is the lamb shoulder. Now this lamb shoulder has been in here for about 4 hours. This is a different technique again. We call this one a pot roast. So pot roasting, basically you start off with onions, carrots, so like a mirepoix. You add your tomato paste, a little bit of red wine, and then some stock. And then that rolling bubble creates this beautiful poaching liquor, which is just so fragrant, smells great. Great for lamb shoulders, pork shoulders, anything that is going to be a little bit tough but has a lot of flavour, because then that flavour is infused into your poaching liquor. So this is the lamb shoulder. Now it's been boned and tied. You can ask for this from your butcher. Okay, so I'm just taking this ties off, because what I'm going to do is, this is a great dish for busy restaurants, pubs, that sort of thing, because you can prepare in advance. It's a double cook method. So basically this is already cooked all the way through. It's falling apart. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to roll this lamb shoulder. So when I roll it, it forms a lovely log shape. And then what I can do is I just slice off the portion as I need it. Goes back into the oven, regen, and then you can serve with whatever takes your fancy. We've got a little potato terrine going with it today, and some lovely fresh asparagus. I've got a little wild garlic as well, which is going to be absolutely lovely with this lamb shoulder. So that ties are off now. This lamb shoulder I'm going to lift gently, because as I said, it's falling apart. You can see it, it's just beautifully cooked. It hasn't gone too far so that it just dissipates, but it's still got a little bit of sort of texture to it. So all I'm doing now, and you're better off doing this when when it's warm. Reason being is you'll be able to shape it and mold it. Because it's got a good fat content, it actually will set, all right? So all I'm doing now is using the board to keep that cling film nice and tight, okay? Now, as I roll it, I'm tightening it. So each roll means that it forces it down into shape, all right? You get this lovely log shape, which once I chill and then bring it out, you can imagine it's going to get a beautiful little disc. That disc is actually going to sit lovely on the plate because of the fat content. It holds it together. So basically it's a pot roasted rolled shoulder of lamb dish. It's a dish I've been doing for years. I would have had it on in my restaurant in Uluru in Armagh for years. Now I run pubs, and I still use this dish in the pubs up in Belfast, and the reason being is, you can imagine you're trying to get food out quickly, so cooking a rack of lamb is not going to, number one, be efficient, and number two, it's going to be very costly. So this sort of a dish and this sort of a cut of meat is perfect for that all-elusive high GP. I think as chefs come back to work, that's the one thing we're going to get hammered on. All our dishes are going to have to be looked at in terms of making good GP. So that's just rolled out into the log shape that I want the size of now. Okay, I want to make sure that it's nice and tight, so I'm going to go long ways as well. Now this is just going to ensure that if keeps its shape. All right, so one goes over like that. Don't be afraid to get a lot of cling film around it. The tricky thing is though, when you're taking it off, make sure you get all the cling film off. Customers don't like it. Right, so that is my lovely lamb shoulder rolled into a log shape, okay, and then that's going to go onto the blast chiller. Right, so the next bit I'm going to do is a lovely little bit of pastry work, okay. So I've got this puff pastry. I'm going to make a lamb pie essentially. Okay, so this is going back to where we had the cannon of lamb before we mixed with the wild mushrooms. I just want to try and make a nice little pie. Now this pie, you know, it's not a petivier, it's not anything fancy, it's just simple lamb, wild mushroom, a little bit of tomato in it, and as you can see, it's really rich in its flavour. Again, it's going to lend itself well with the lovely accompaniments. Now, what I'm going to do is to make this pie, it's a rough pie, guys. It's not, you know, I still want it to look good, but I'm just going to cut that pastry like that, just to get a nice shape like that so that I can put this in. So how I'm going to do it, I'm going to make sure that my lamb mixture gets pushed into that mold, okay, and then all I want to do is just squeeze it out like that, okay. So you're keeping it right in the middle there, okay. You're taking another bit of pastry. All right, now this pastry is nice and chilled, so got to work fairly quickly with it, okay. Now what I want to do is I want to go over the top of that, okay. However, I want to try and get a nice seal on it. So I've got an egg wash here. This egg wash, I'm just going to wash right the way around that molded lamb cannon and wild mushroom pie mix. All right. Now, there's different techniques you can use to do this. Okay, so all I'm going to do is just going to put it over the top like that. All right, so get it in like that. Then I'm going to use my cutter, but I'll use a larger one just to force it over the top. All right. Now, what that's doing is it's pressing that pastry together as well. All right. So just going down like that. Now, what I want to do is possibly come in with a smaller cutter just to create a nice little lip on that pie. All you're doing is just pushing that down. Give it a little wiggle like that. So it's creating a lip right the way around that pie. Then back to your larger cutter you started with. Now to do that technique where I was pushing down, I use the top, which is the molded bit. It's rolled, okay? So it actually forces the pastry together, but it won't cut it, just in case you don't get the right shape you want, okay? So you can see that indent there. Now I go back to the sharp side. That sharp side, just push down, all right? And when I push down, you get this lovely little upside down pie. Get it to come out just like that, okay? So that pie, then I'm going to get a little bit of greaseproof paper, okay? Now, this greaseproof paper, I'm going to sit my pie just on the top like that. Going to get a little bit of the egg wash again. Okay, making sure that it's covered right the way around. Now, that can go in the oven and cook till it's golden brown. Great way of using up that cannon, which would be a sort of leaner sort of meat, so you do need to cook that out. All right. Now that one can go in the oven just until it's lovely golden brown, or at about 160 for about 15 minutes. Okay. Okay guys, a little bit of veg prep now, okay? So with this lamb, I'm trying to keep it nice and simple, but I've got this lovely asparagus, right? So everybody always goes, oh, where do you cut the asparagus? So the idea is where it snaps. Where it snaps is where you cut it, All right, so I'm just going to get that nice and flat now that it's snapped. Okay, there's a technique that we would use restaurant-wise, just makes it look a little bit better. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to run a ring around that stem of that asparagus, not cutting all the way through. All right, so all I'm doing is scoring it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel the outside of that stalk just down from that cut or incision line. Okay, and all that's doing is just keeping it a little bit neater. You get a lovely turned asparagus. All right, so you imagine you get that. Okay, so run through these. If I'm doing probably about 2 dishes, probably give them 2 asparagus each. Any more than that's a bit of overkill. You've got to watch that GP after all. And don't forget that I've still got some baby leeks to go on as well. So you've got baby leeks, a little bit of asparagus, and I'm going to do a little onion petal as well. Now the onion petals are great. The reason being is they really, they're a great vessel for the jus or the sauce to go in, because they'll sit on the plate and they're like little, you know, cauldrons of this beautiful jus that we've made out of the pot roasting liquor as well. So that as lamb has served 2 purposes. Number one, I've got a lovely lamb shoulder which is in the fridge at the moment, but I've also got a liquor that I'm going to make a beautiful lamb stock out of. Never ever throw any of that sort of stuff out. You can use that as stock and then you're doubling up on your money. Again, just make sure that's cut nice and neat. So going around that asparagus. So as I go around that asparagus, I just slide the knife down. Nice sharp paring knife all the way to your thumb. Try not to cut your thumb. Got that pressure on. And then you've got that lovely asparagus which has just been turned. When you get these leeks, okay, yes, they're beautiful, but don't forget leeks, soil, all that sort of thing. So try and just trim the end of them, taking off any bit of that you think has been in the soil, and then have a look, make sure that, you know, don't forget people eat with their eyes, so I'm just going to cut that little bit there. All right, so that looks lovely now. Okay, so again, taking down that stalk, cut through nice and neat, and then we just get that top bit there. All right, so I'm going to do another one here. So basically, when you're looking at all this sort of stuff, pre-prep can be done before service. I'm not talking about going into service, making all this hard work for yourself. There are a couple of different elements. That pie can be made sitting in the fridge. Take it out, goes in the oven. Got 15 minutes on that cook time. You know, you can make bigger pies. You know, the opportunities are vast when it comes to this sort of thing. You've got that lovely lamb rump. You know, I've got that sitting here. So, you know, this lamb rump is still sitting in that vac sack. That vac sack can stay in my fridge until I need it, gets dropped in the sous vide and away it goes. You know, so all of this sort of stuff is just cooking with a little bit of thought in speed of service and in making money. That's what this is all about. We have to make money. When we look at what the industry has been through, if we reopen and we have dishes on that aren't profitable, it's, you know, we're fighting a losing battle, guys. The humble onion. All right, so I'm going to just take that top off. Okay, and then again the bottom. Okay, I don't want it all the way through. I want to try and keep a little bit of it. All right, and then simply straight through the middle. All right, so what we're trying to get is these beautiful things in the middle. Now don't forget, got all those peelings and everything. They're all going in my stock pot. They're all going to add flavour so that I can make lovely jus, stocks, sauces. Don't throw it out your peelings and your shavings, guys. Turn it into something, you know. Mushroom stock, carrots, all that sort of stuff that we're peeling. Right, And then all I'm doing is I'm pulling out that little tiny bit there. All right. So as I said to you, it's a great little garnish, very simple. You just want to try and ease that out. And you can imagine that all filled with sort of, you know, a lovely rich jus. So when you cut into it, that jus then goes all across the plate. All right. It's just something a little bit different, but it's a humble onion, as I said. All right. So I'm going through, I'm going to get 4 of them as well. Might have to go into a bigger one here. Right, so that's all my veg prep. We will now move on to some other garnishes. Right guys, just fresh out of the oven. There's my little pie, okay, and that was the little lamb and mushroom pie. It's come out really well. And as I said to you, it's not perfect, you know, it's rustic and it looks amazing. It's got a little bit of a rise there. Once you cut into that, all of that sort of richness of the wild mushrooms and the lamb's going to come out, okay? It's just a simple little way of using up the lamb cannon, okay? It's a lovely little lamb pie there. Alrighty, get that ready. Okay, my favourite part. Let's plate all this. Cooked all the different elements now. It's time to bring it all together. So as I said, this is the lamb rump that's been sous vide, 65, still beautiful and tender. Okay, taking it out of the vac sack, I'm just going to roll it in a little bit of olive oil, garlic and butter. Okay, reason being is I want to get that colour on it. Okay, so that's going in now. All right, so that's lovely. And while that's going in, I'll grab everything out of the oven. Okay. So, got this lovely lamb shoulder, got this lamb pie. Okay, so I'll move this out of the way here. What I've also done, guys, I've gone and foraged a little bit of wild garlic. Now, it's the time of the year for wild garlic. It's cheap, you don't pay for it, it's foraged. All right, so now's the time to get out there and go and check out all the local sort of parks and see what you can get. All right, I don't know if this plate's going to be big enough, but we'll give it a go. All righty, so got that lovely little lamb pie. And I want to have that just sitting off a little bit like that. Okay, I have a lovely bit of potatoes. You can't have dinner without potatoes. Okay, so this is a potato terrine. This will be, the recipe will be in the webinar, so you'll be able to pick up the recipe on how to do this one. It's basically just like a layered potato. Okay, now I just want to put that one in there. All right, now don't forget that you've got all these different elements all coming together, all great products and very, very cost efficient. All right, they are not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Lamb rump searing nicely there. Right, so let's get a little bit creative with this puree, will we? Actually, what I might do, let's go really funky on this one. Okay, so this is okay, one we call the splat. All right, so you're getting that all around. Yeah, get it all over the bench as well. All right, but that puree now sitting all around there. All right, so it's the base for everything. Okay, then it also helps when you are talking about putting elements onto a plate and it goes front of house, you know, it goes to the customer. That puree will help it all sit together. So, potato terrine. Okay, now don't forget what we said about that lovely lamb shoulder. I want to try and get that cling film off. Best way is it just lifts off like that if you've had it in the oven. Right, so lamb shoulder, again, cooked so that it falls apart. All right, I want to try and put that one at about there. All right, again, all that flavour is still sort of, you know, coming through because it's got the fat, but it's also been poached. So when it sort of, you know, cooks like that, it does fall apart. However, it's still got that brilliant flavour. Okay, so get this garnish now. I've done a little bit of a breadcrumb as well. Now the breadcrumb, I've put a little bit of wild garlic through it, so it's a lovely green colour. This is these onion petals. I just wanted them that little bit darker than everything else. I'll show you why. Okay, it's coming up nicely. Asparagus done. This is my lamb rump now. Now, this is all off the one animal, guys. So you've got all these fabulous flavors, different cuts, all very cheap. They're not expensive at all. And this is how we make money. This is what this is all about nowadays. All right, so lamb rump. I just want to go down and carve it. Sitting at about 65 degrees in that sous vide bath. All right, so it's still lovely and pink in the middle. All right, so what I would like to do is I'd like to try and get a nice middle bit. Okay, I'm going to put that just in there like that. So all I'm doing is I'm giving the 3 different sorts. Okay, now my veg garnish. I'm going to set that one aside there. So this is just charred. I just wanted to just get a bit of color on it, all right? So this is my onion petal, okay? So the onion petal, as it starts to char up as well, it'll go hard, and that's what I want, because I want to use that, as I said, for the vehicle to serve the sauce in, okay? So I'm going to arrange this nicely like this. A little bit of charred asparagus as well, sitting like that. You've got a little charred leek up over the top. I'm going to give them another asparagus there. I like asparagus, so I'll try and give them a bit more. Right, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to plate it so that when the customer looks at it, they're looking at it like that. All right, so it's getting that height and everything coming back through. All right, so then I have a tiny bit of jus. Right. Right, so this jus I just want to pour on. All right, made from the roasting juices of the lamb shoulder. Just putting it in. As you can see, that little oyster petals sitting nicely. Lamb like that. I might even get a little bit just over the potatoes so that lovely jus goes down into the layers of the potatoes. Right, finish it off. Let's go mad with the wild garlic. I'm going to pick a nice couple of little bits like this. Just want to get the prettiest. Right, there we go. Get that sitting up there like that. I'm going to finish it off with a little bit of this lovely. I've got a sourdough crumb, just with garlic, wild garlic through it, just to give it that little bit of crunch and texture too. Dried that crumb out a little bit, and that just sits on nicely. And there we go, guys. Tasting of local lamb, done 3 ways. We have lamb and wild mushroom pie, which is done with a cannon. We have the lamb shoulder, which is pot roasted. It's one of my favorite, that one. And then you've got the lamb rump as well, which is sous vide. So 3 very different techniques for 3 very different cuts. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one, and this will be a little bit of inspiration to get back on the pans, get cooking, and make some money. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm starving.
Well, I think that's a good sign then, Brian. It's hard watching
absolutely
yourself.
starving.
It really is. Yeah, I think you pick faults in what you do, but I think the main message there is sort of, we need to work with the other skilled people within the profession. So we need to work with our wine suppliers, work with our butchers. You know, we need to be able to access, you know, ingredients that they may take a little bit longer to cook, but you know, they're cheaper in price. So therefore, our revenue is sort of maximized. You know, restaurants and pubs have sort of hit a ceiling when it comes to the price that we can charge for dishes. So our customers are now looking for value for money. You know, it's been a shocking year, and I get that, but we still have to give value for money. And I think it's when we have the likes of Miel doing, you know, his shoulders of lamb and the cannon, and but you know, the primal cuts, like the rack, look, they taste amazing. But you know, what's a rack go for now, Miel? £6-7 pounder.
Well, just there at Easter, for example, for a butcher to buy a whole lamb from the factory, it was costing £160-170 for one lamb at 21 kilos.
Right.
So
that would have been 60, 70 a year ago, or 3 years ago.
Close to about 80, 85, 90.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the price of everything's gone up.
Double.
So everything. So again, as Dean says, we'll try. You can use those more expensive cuts, but then you're going to have to charge more to make any profit on it. Whereas if you can bring in the slightly cheaper cuts and make a dish like he just made, and I'll agree with Brian. I haven't had lunch yet, and I'm ready to eat this table. But you know what I mean. So if you can make dishes like that, where your customer, it's costing the customer less, but they're getting a top class dish, and you're still able to make a profit on it, it's the way forward.
I think it has to be.
Is some of that an older style of cooking and preparing?
Yeah.
You mentioned about never seeing anyone do a tunnel, you know, in a long time.
Yeah, the tunnel boning. Yeah, I mean, it is to a certain extent, Brian. But you know, I've always used a lamb shoulder, and the reason being is I love the sort of, you know, as Michal said, he's correct. It's got muscles and it's got the sinew and the fat. But I like a ribeye steak, and why I like a ribeye is because I just love the flavor that you get from the fat. You know, as that starts to hit the pan, or you know, you barbecue, or you've got raw flame onto a sort of a knuckle of ribeye, you know, there's no better flavor, no better way of, you know, exploding the flavor coming through that meat. And I think the lamb shoulder does that. You know. So yeah, it's definitely an older style of cook. I wouldn't want to call myself old. But,
no, I'm suggesting that maybe we're bringing back something which is giving us a little better value to the restaurant, but also needs that bit of more thought involved as well. As you say, if you're going to do a pot roast, it's 4 hours.
Yeah, it's slow cooking. Slow cooking is the terminology they would use. It's slow food. So yes, it is going back to pot roasting, going back to you know, braising. You know, pork belly, for instance. Get off the lamb, pork belly. Love pork belly, but you know, if you cook it within 2 hours and serve it, it just doesn't work. You know, it's a 4-hour process. You press it overnight under weight, and it just renders down that fat, and you get this beautiful crispy pork belly when it goes out, because it's been treated well. It's a you know, these cuts need time, you know, and not the herb, but time in sort of, you know, under temperature is the way to do it.
Can I just remind everybody that's watching, you know, if you have any questions, feel free to put them forward. And also, Dean has told me that he's going to put the recipes for all of these things, plus round to his house, up on the internet.
No, we'll get the recipes up for everybody. Have a go. Breaking it down into each sort of each element of that. So, you know, you've got Miel's lamb rump, you've got the lamb shoulder, and then I've made the pie out of the cannon. So it's all there, and we'll get that up online, maybe through the business support website. Yep.
So I think next and last but not least, wine. So maybe we should make a move on that.
So guys, one thing that us as chefs also need to think about is when we're coming up with a dish, go that way so you can see the different flavors. When we're coming up with a dish, we really need to think about how we can pair them with either a wine or a beer or a cider. I mean, it's very on vogue at the moment to have beer tasting or beer pairing. Cider is also massive with coming into nice weather. Hopefully we'll get a bit of nice weather this year. So when we're designing a dish, I always try and look at the wine list, just so that front of house have an idea of if they get asked what wine would go with that dish, then we have the ability to be able to, speak with knowledge. So I've selected two today, okay? One Australian Shiraz, it's very cliche, I know, but lamb Shiraz, okay? So what we're looking for in a Shiraz, this one will have a little bit of a spicy note to it. However, it isn't a very dark, rich sort of Shiraz. Some Shirazes you get are very bold, they're very peppery, they're very, they can sort of take away from the dish. However, this one is a little bit lighter and sits really well with the lamb shoulder, especially as it's got those sort of heavier notes of garlic and the rosemary and the thyme. So that goes really well. When you're on the nose, you're thinking about rich red fruits. That one there is really lovely. As I said, it's not a dark peppery one. And that's going to sit really well, that lamb. Now, another way to go would be a Rioja. Spanish Riojas are very sort of rich as well. They would be grown in heat, therefore the sort of, the tannins on the berries, on the grapes, are sort of very sharp almost, okay? But this one here, again, if we're looking at a Rioja, in terms of Rioja, it doesn't have that sort of, darkness again. However, if you have a look at the legs on that, and when we talk about the legs, it's the meniscus. So the meniscus is the sort of film of what would be left of alcohol that runs down. It is looking like it's quite heavy, and it's at 12.5. 12.5% is great in terms of where we need to be in alcohol percentage in wine. The reason being is, you can imagine if a couple for instance, takes a bottle of red wine and it's a 14.5%, by the time they've finished that, they're on their ear. You won't get that second sale of a bottle of wine. So at 12%, 12.5%, it's not going to, get people inebriated or drunk, and therefore you can get a second sale of wine, or maybe a glass, So if you're talking in terms of, wine by the glass, it's very predominant now that you would have a white, maybe with a fish, and then you go over to the red with something like this, and then you have a dessert wine. And if you have 14.5% of all three of those glasses, you're not going to get the Bailey's coffee at the end, So again, we've got to try and look at getting as much revenue as we can. So wine selection, very, very important. Again, that Rioja, that's a lovely, rich, smooth. I wish you could try that one, guys. It's beautiful. Now that paired with, the lamb mushroom pie, paired with the rump, which is sous vide and then just seared or caramelized at the end, is perfect. If I was going to go for the two, it pains me to say it, but I think I'd choose the Rioja over an Australian Shiraz. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed what we've done today. We've gone through a few different ways to maximize your sort of profitability. Good luck to everybody who's reopening hospitality after a year of COVID restrictions and lockdown. I hope that it all goes well. Thank you very much. I've been Dean Coppard. Bye now.
And short but sweet. And Dean, you preferred a non-Australian wine. I'm
Oh, I
shocked.
knew this was going to come back and
I'm
haunt me,
shocked.
mate. Yeah. I'm just glad it wasn't a New Zealand one there, because I would I would have lied. I would have lied. No, look, at the end of the day, I think, when we're talking about the terms of New World, Old World, Spanish Rioja with lamb, yes, it's great. It's wonderful. Australian Shirazes can be peppery. They can overpower the flavour of the meat. And some people say, oh, but lamb, it's not a delicate flavour. It's big and it's bold. Yes, but elements are, but you still need to balance it out with your wine. And I think the Rioja hit the note with that one, mate.
I think it was a very good point about the actual strength of the wine and maximising your profits by making sure that people get a good wine that they need, but also coming back later.
Yeah, I think the Australian winemakers looked at it a few years ago, and what it was, the heat that you grow the grape in has an effect on the wine percentage. The longer you leave it, the stronger it gets. So they looked at it, and you got 14.5% wines, and you just can't drink 2-3 glasses of those, because you just don't remember the dinner. So, they all got together and they did look at it and they go, right, okay, so we'll bring it back down to 13, and now, 12.5 is about normal, so it allows you to upsell a little bit. I'm not saying you go into, try and get as much money as possible, but if somebody would like another glass of wine, you need to be able to afford them. Number one, the range, the selection, and you need to be able to, not have wine that sort of, is too strong, to affect things. So, yeah.
Well, thanks very much. I'm just going to briefly bring in Margaret. She's going to talk to us about some of the funding options, and then I'll wrap up.
Hi, Brian.
Hopefully I didn't throw you in there.
No, not at all. I suppose I'm going to help close it along with Brian. Thanks everybody for staying the course here this evening. And the presentations and the demonstrations were really insightful. Micheál and Dean, you did Trojan work there, and I know the camera crew behind did really good work on this project as well. I suppose what we want to offer at the very end of this, with regard to the Southern Regional College, some of the help that we can give to restaurants with regard to menu development and stuff like that on an innovative basis is based through some of our programs that are fully funded here within the college. So the Innovate Us program, and I suppose moves on to an innovation voucher. Okay, they would be some of the innovation programs that perhaps the likes of Dean would be able to go in and look at menu development there. With regard to upskilling and training, the Department for the Economy's, I suppose, flagship training program is the Skills Focus program, which is 100% funded this year. Some of the other programs we look at is a cross-border project with another, with a business, and a graduate going into a business is the Fusion program, and I think it's been recently rebranded as Boost. The last thing we would ask you, and as I say, thank you very much for staying the course, is if you could, when you get an email from us, if you could complete an evaluation. We'd love to know, I suppose, what we're good at, but we would also like to know if there's anything else out there we could be doing better, all right, or any areas out there that you think we could be working in. This program, the HATS program, was specifically produced for the hospitality and tourism industry with regard to the recovery package for it. We've got another one coming up on podcasting for the tourism sector on the 3rd of June. That's 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning. And then I suppose as a follow-on project to this, we're also looking at a funded program for the retail sector, but there'll be more to come on that. Brian, I'll go back to you.
Thanks very much, Margaret. And as Margaret said, the last in our series is coming up on the 3rd of June. It's on podcasting for tourism businesses, and it's hosted by Kieran Swale, who we've seen before. I just want to thank Dean and Micheál for all of their sterling, as Margaret said, Trojan effort there. I think that I'm now absolutely starving, and I'm going to have to find somewhere to eat on the way home if I don't eat the car. Someone did mention McDonald's, but I think that would be a bit of a shame after looking at that very fine food.
I think so.
I think I'd like to thank Aisling for producing this and keeping us all working. Amy in the background as well, who is actually sharing the webinar or the presentation in the first place. Margaret for putting it all together, and obviously the people who take the photography. I've been Brian McGee, and I'd just like to thank everybody that attended, and thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening and good night.